Hey, people. Starting these things off is always a little awkward. I never quite know what to say. Um, and since my friend Howard told me that I looked a bit tired in my last video, I figured I would use my standing desk and try to be a little more animated. Is that even possible? Howard's 88, so we're going to cut him a break. Anyway, I wanted to take a few minutes and kind of double back on some of the stuff that I talked about in my last video because I feel like I may have jumped the gun a little bit. I was talking about our rights and where they come from and how it's like a spiritual process. But something kind of occurred to me as I thought more about it and I watched the video over again. And what I've come to realize is that over, I don't know, generations probably, especially in, since I've been alive and probably even my parents' generation, we've come to a place where we almost need permission to do a lot of things. Is it right? Should I do it? Are you sure it's okay? Like, there's so much stuff that I feel we ask permission for, and we wait to find out that it's okay before we go ahead and do it. So when I talk about some of the stuff that I'm doing and it seems somewhat unconventional, and here I am kind of by myself, maybe my tolerance for risk is a little higher than others, but nonetheless, I feel like I need to double back a little bit and kind of give everyone permission to at least be open to the stuff that I'm talking about. And when I say that, I mean kind of lay out the framework as to why the stuff I'm doing is actually the way it's supposed to be done, the way that it was meant to be done from the beginning. But because things have gotten so convoluted over the years, and I mean like hundreds of years, that we've kind of lost track of, like I said, who we are, where our rights come from, and how to claim those rights. So what I want to do in this, hopefully quicker than last time video, is explain that a little bit and show you, give you the proof that I'm not like making this stuff up out of thin air. It's the way it was meant to be, and kind of give you permission to explore it. Because my feeling is, and when I talk about this being a spiritual process, I truly believe that if enough people, and I know this, it's not even just a belief, I know it, if enough people know to their core who they are and what their rights are and how amazing they are as, something that is divine. When there's enough people that know that, we're going to kind of reach this critical mass of energy. And that's when things are finally going to start to shift. And if I just lost a few of you because I'm getting a little too woo-woo, then no apologies. That is the way it is for me. And it's proven itself out in my own life. And that's why I'm pretty comfortable talking about this stuff. And that's when I say it's a spiritual process. It's not about people rising up and organizing and all that stuff. This is a very personal thing. It's an individual thing, and it's something that you have to want to do. So, I know there may not be people that have the fortitude to watch my 20-minute videos, but the few that do, a chance that means you're invested, and you're coming along on this journey with me. So I'm going to explain why this journey is necessary and perfectly in line with what has been going on since at least the United States was created. And I'm going to first do a little screen share here and go back to initially what we looked at in the last video, and just to basically quickly review what I talked about last time. So sorry about this. Let's see. Divinity. We come from something divine, whether that's part of your belief system or not. I don't know how else we could possibly explain it. Something, source, creator, God, the universe, something created us. And because something divine created us, we are essentially divine. And because we are alive, we have a bit of divinity in us, and we have rights that come from a greater power. And that's what makes us, man, woman, people, the second most divine thing, here. And so when man, woman, people created the Constitution, everything that happens that comes from a man, a woman, or a group of people is of a lesser energy, a lesser power, a lesser being. So the Constitution, the federal government, the state government, and all these things that are created by the man, the woman, the group of people, it's a hierarchy. There's all lesser. So even though we may decide that, I'm going to take a job as a public servant, essentially the president is a public servant. He's taken a job that is defined by, the Constitution. So his role as president takes a back seat to man, woman, people. When go back to that desert island, when you meet the man, Joe Biden on a deserted island, you're equal. You have the same amount of rights. It is what it is. Suddenly we fly over to the United States, and now, because he has the title president, he has more rights than us. It doesn't work that way. He may have more authority, but his authority comes from the Constitution. And who created the Constitution? Men, women, people, essentially, by the people, for the people. And the preamble spells that out pretty clearly. So know that to your core. We are divine because we're here, and man, woman, and the group of us as the people created all this stuff underneath. So as long as you know who you are as a man, as a woman, you know that you are supreme, and that's where your rights come from, and all of this stuff underneath, keeping those things compartmentalized and not letting them, not getting confused. Anytime you're challenged by someone, you go back to that desert island and you say to yourself, if I were facing this person on a desert island, we would be equal. It doesn't necessarily matter what their title is. And I'm not saying that you just disrespect everyone or you just yell at them and tell them you're a man or a woman or whatever. But once you understand the stuff to your core, a lot of that stuff starts to fall away. And maybe that sounds strange, but it's true. Not that way. Let's go this way. Okay. So I'll let y'all in on a little secret here. I make notes for everything, and this is no different. And now you're kind of seeing behind the scenes. These are my notes. So what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about is called common law. And, you'll hear some people poo-poo it and, that's just some crazy patriot movement. I'm going to show you in the next few paragraphs, like why that is not the case and why common law is something that has existed from, back in the 1200s. The Magna Carta was kind of where it all started as far as written down, things that are actually in writing, but it comes all the way through and is evident in our Constitution, both the federal Constitution and the Constitution of where I am here in New Jersey. But I just want to put it in terms so that everyone can understand why we've come so far from the way it's meant to be, right? So does it make sense that there are literally hundreds of thousands of codes, statutes, laws, guidelines, policies, either from the federal government, the state government, the municipalities, the places where you work? We're literally drowning in legal stuff, and in order to function within any one of these little entities, whether it be the state government or the federal government or your workplace, you're expected to know, many of these laws and guidelines, right? So if I leave the house and I go jump in the car and I drive to the end of the street and I blow the stop sign and a police officer, pulls me over, he's going to write me a ticket, and it's going to be based on a New Jersey statute. And I just want to keep going the wrong way. All right. So here is all of the revised statutes for New Jersey. And if that was the statute that he's going to write me a ticket for is New Jersey 39, Chapter 4, Section 144. Not that you need to know that, but my point being, here's just one title of the revised statutes, Title 39. Look at all these. I mean, honestly, as a driver, you're expected to know these things. Like, how is that even possible? And I'm not even like, look, this is where the little scroll thing is. I have so much more to go, like all the way down here. Let's go all the way down. 144. Here. Stopping or yielding right of way before entering stop or yield intersections. Like, that's the ticket he's going to write me. I'm supposed to know among all of this craziness, here it is. Granted, we just know that, yes, you're not supposed to run a stop sign, but how is it that we're supposed to know all of these other things? Point being, it's virtually impossible to understand every little bit and piece. We all drive cars, and how can we all be expected to know this stuff? Like, the fact that the word driver in legal terms means something very different than how we use it in everyday, conversation. And this is another aspect that really makes it difficult for the average man or woman to function in what we call the legal system, because the legal system has their own language, literally. Like, here, this is the legal dictionary that I use. It's no, small book. And this is a 4th edition. This is like a way old book, because they've changed they don't change the words. They don't change the meaning of the words, but they change the way they're presented in the book. This is from 1968. But the word driver in that dictionary, and the way that it's used in a lot of like legal stuff, a driver is someone that gets paid to do driving. So an Uber driver, a taxi cab driver, if I'm getting paid in my car to go from point A to point B, that makes me a driver. Otherwise, I'm a traveler. So when it comes to the legal side of things, if you don't know the words that you're using, you can really get tripped up in court. So, if we start from the beginning, clearly there's already so many disadvantages, because for one, there's no way we can possibly memorize all of the codes, statutes, ordinances, that we need to function in typical society. And two, we don't necessarily speak the language. So right from the start, we're already disadvantaged. And oftentimes I use the word, I try to use the words men, women, people, as opposed to person. It would be a lot easier just to say, that person. But if you look up the definition of person in a legal sense, you'll find that it's not just a living man or woman. It also means a corporation or a business or some type of, dead fictitious entity. So it's something that you just want to train your eyes to see whenever you're reading, legal stuff. If you see the word person, that has a very broad definition. And that's why I'm very specific in the using of the terms man, woman, people, even though it takes a little more effort. And, I'm sure that there's people that are saying, oh, there's no way we could possibly know all this stuff and we don't actually have to know it. But you break one of those statutes and see what happens. You're expected to know this stuff. And a maxim of law is that, ignorance is not a defense. Just because you don't know it doesn't mean that you're not going to be guilty of it. So when it comes to all of this stuff, by the nature of functioning inside the system, you're expected to know it. Right. So, okay. So let's say we are brought into court for that traffic ticket, right? Or like we want to sell a house. Like, it's not something we can just do on our own. Like going into court as a, what they would call a pro se litigant, or, trying to sell your house without having an attorney there for attorney review. It's virtually an impossible task. And you basically need the attorney just to be a translator of all that legal language. And when you think about it, like, how is that fair? If I get an attorney, here, little old me that doesn't make a ton of money, and, I get busted for something, I can't afford to go out and get a great attorney. So does that mean I'm going to get a lesser defense because I can't afford it? And how is that fair? Like, what if they give me some, attorney right out of law school that's, pro bono. It just, the way our legal system is right now, it doesn't make sense. And it never was meant to be like this. Actually, here, this next point kind of brings that home. And if there's any attorneys watching this, they're not going to be very happy about this, but come on and challenge me on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Anyway, attorney at law in this big book is defined as an advocate, counsel, or official agent employed in preparing, managing, and trying cases in the courts, an officer in a court of justice who's employed by a party in a cause to manage it for him. So right off the bat, an attorney's loyalty is first to the court. They're an officer of the court first and foremost. They're licensed by the bar. The Bar Association, if you follow it back far enough, it's part of the legal system. So when you hire an attorney, you're hiring them to manage your situation, but they're going to do it with the interest of the court in mind, first and foremost. And if you've ever been involved in a divorce, which I have been, thankfully we didn't go through an attorney, but I've heard this enough, that the attorneys kind of keep things going back and forth, because and I'm not saying they're dishonest, but when I was dealing with that stuff with my uncle, I can't tell you how many times the judge said, you need to get an attorney. You need to get an attorney. When in fact, no, we didn't need to get an attorney. We were able to handle it. As soon as I understood the basics of what was going on, we were able to handle it. Now, I'm not saying that everyone should run off and try and handle all their own legal battles, but what I am saying is that our system was not meant to function the way it currently functions based on the necessity of needing an attorney. And if you learn a few things, you can kind of figure out most things. So I'm going to prove it to you, this whole thing about the Constitution and how it's supposed to work. Real quick history lesson, right? So New Jersey was one of the original 13 colonies. Our state constitution was written in 1776. It precedes the US Constitution by 11 years. So our original constitution, it states, and you can search this on the internet. I just copied and pasted it from one of the sites. New Jersey State Constitution of 1776. It doesn't really have articles and stuff. It's just a bunch of numbers. So number 22 states that the common law of England, as well as so much of the statute law, has been heretofore practiced in this colony, shall still remain in force until they shall be altered by a future law of the legislature in such parts, blah, 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 blah. The rights and privileges contained in this chapter and that of the inestimable right of trial by jury shall remain confirmed as part of the law of this colony without repeal forever. So real quick, when I talk about, a man or a woman being able to handle their own stuff without having to go get an attorney and interpret all of this statutory gibberish, that arena is called common law. It's literally the common law of the common people. It's not necessarily written down. It's common sense. It just makes sense. The guy that, Alphonse Fagiolo is the gentleman in Pennsylvania that has helped me through a lot of this stuff. And he calls it Barney Rubble, Barney takes Fred's ball, Fred wants it back. You figure it out. You watch two kids playing in the sandbox and they know common law because they just figure stuff out. They negotiate. So I just wanted to point out that New Jersey started their first constitution, clearly mentions that the common law will still remain in force in the state of New Jersey. 1844, New Jersey rewrites the Constitution, or they make some edits, let's say. But you can see Article 10, the title of it is called Schedule. The common law and statute laws now in force, not repugnant to this Constitution, shall remain in force. So we've got the common law of England back in 1776. And here again, we still have the common law and the statutes now in force. The courts are basically the ones that, they don't decide the law. Well, I don't want to get confusing here. So the courts are the place where you go to seek justice, right? So The several courts of law and equity shall continue with like powers and jurisdiction as if the Constitution had not been adopted. So this is basically, we've got the original Constitution, and then we've got version 1, or I guess version 2. So this new version is basically, as far as the courts go, this new version doesn't even exist. So we're still, we're still in this common law arena, right? As far as the courts go, as far as seeking justice, common law is still the way things are meant to work. Okay, fast forward again. Now we're in 1947, and we've got the third New Jersey state constitution. So we've got 1776, we've got 1844, and now we've got 1947. Here we have, we've added a bunch of stuff. So we're up to Article 11 now. It's still called Schedule, and it's Section 1. All law, statutory and otherwise, all rules and regulations of administrative bodies, and all rules of court in force at the time this Constitution or any article thereof takes effect shall remain in force. So you see some consistency there, right? Except the way these shysters do it, they took the word common out. I mean, it's essentially the same sentence, but they took the word common out. We've still got the statutes, and they've added this otherwise, rules and regulations. So we were pretty simple with the common law because the common people understood it. And we also had some statutes that dealt with government. Then we moved to 1844, and we've still got the common law and the statutes. Now we get to 1947, and things are getting so complicated, we need to take away the word common. We need to put statutory and otherwise, and then we've got to add rules and regulations of the administrative bodies, which is interesting because when you kind of step outside the arena of common law, now you're in the administrative world, which brings all kinds of craziness. So 1947, when they're saying all law, they're meaning common law. They just, very specifically take out that word common because they don't necessarily want us to realize that. Then we go on the same document in section 4. Again, except as otherwise provided in this Constitution and until otherwise provided by law, common law, all courts now existing in this state abolished in paragraph 3 hereof, other than those abolished in paragraph 3 thereof, shall continue as if this Constitution had not been adopted. So basically what they did between the 1844 Constitution and the 1947 Constitution was they took all these courts that are highlighted here in this nice teal color. There was a whole bunch of courts, and they all dealt with different specific issues. So they took a few of those courts and kind of put them in one bucket essentially, and they turned them into like the Supreme Court, the Superior Court, and then the county courts. So that's what when they're saying that they abolished certain courts in paragraph 3, they basically abolished these itty bitty little courts and rolled them up into one package. But the important point being is that all courts now existing in the state shall continue as if this Constitution had not been adopted. So 1947, as far as law goes, a new Constitution had not been adopted. In 1844, as far as law goes, as if this Constitution had not been adopted. So basically we're back at square one. 1776, the common law of England still remained in force. So today, here we are dealing with the 1947 Constitution is basically what we have to go on. And clearly I've just laid out the timeline where common law has not gone away. The law of men and women to get justice without having to go through this, crazy court of attorneys and legalese and jumping through hoops that are just beyond belief. That's one way to do it. Or you can learn a little bit, learn who you are, learn what your rights are, get an understanding of the basics of the court system. This isn't, like I said, it's not brain surgery. It's possible. And like I said, I've been learning it and I've been putting it to the test, and so far it's working for me. The other thing I just wanted to point to here real quick, 1787 was when the Constitution for the federal government was written. This is, 11 years after the New Jersey state constitution, and the US Constitution was ratified, I think, 2 years later. But there's this Article 6, Section 2, otherwise known as the Supremacy Clause. And basically, the Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. The Supremacy Clause. If the state or local government is not in line with what the Constitution says, the Constitution is supreme. So when states and municipalities are writing statutes and codes that are contrary to the Constitution, they have no standing. They are not withstanding. They have no standing. But oftentimes we don't necessarily know this stuff, and we just accept it and we don't push back. And if you saw the post I put on Facebook earlier, I'll somehow find a way to link it here. But the folks back in the, 150 years ago, they knew this was coming. They knew that we were kind of getting too comfortable with the way things were going, and that soon enough, the corruption would set in. And again, I'm not trying to sound all woo-woo, but that's where we're at. And it just doesn't make sense. And when things don't make sense, you have to ask questions. And if it doesn't make sense that the average man or woman cannot get justice without hiring an expensive attorney and understanding all this legalese, we've really lost our way. So I'm hoping that you'll come with me on a bit of a journey to help us find our way and who we are and what our rights are, so that you can be part of this energy shift that I think is totally coming. But that's all I got for now. I hope everyone has an awesome evening, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.